A very beautiful schoolgirl was walking towards her school. All eyes were on her, admiring her beauty. Her name was Alya, the best student and the treasurer of the student council. Alya's father was from Russia, so she was of mixed heritage. As she walked, a boy suddenly approached her. He greeted Alya and introduced himself as Ando. Very confidently, Ando invited Alya to get to know each other better and asked her to have lunch with him. But with complete indifference, Alya immediately refused the invitation. Not giving up, Ando then asked for Alya's phone number. And very coldly, Alya rejected him outright again. She said she was not interested in Ando at all. Ando could only gape and stay silent. Alya then continued walking past him without feeling the least bit guilty. The other students there were very impressed to see her. Alya flatly rejected Ando's invitation, who turned out to be a boy idolized by the girls there. Alya arrived in her classroom and went to her seat. Right next to her, there was a boy who was sound asleep with his head resting on the desk. Alya greeted him with a good morning, and it turned out his name was Kuze. Kuze did not respond at all. He was still sleeping. Then Alya rudely kicked Kuze's chair with her foot, making Kuze fall and wake up in surprise. Alya was sure that Kuze had stayed up late watching anime again as usual. Kuze admitted it, saying that the anime only ran until 1 a.m., but he had spent too much time discussing his opinions about it. Alya thought Kuze had been arguing on the internet. However, Kuze explained that he had been on the phone for 2 hours with an otaku friend. Instantly, Alya called him insane. Kuze then argued that if expressing love for a piece of work regardless of time and place was the definition of insane, then he proudly declared himself insane. Hearing that, Alya retracted her earlier statement and now called Kuze just plain stupid. Kuze then yawned widely because he was sleepy. Suddenly, Alya spoke in Russian. Kuze was surprised and asked Alya if she had said something. Alya replied that she had only said Kuze had an ugly face. Kuze could only turn away while grumbling. Kuze then checked his desk drawer and realized he hadn't brought his chemistry book. He asked Alya for help to lend him hers. After getting permission from Alya, Kuze moved his desk closer to hers. The lesson began, and Alya placed the chemistry book in the middle for them to read together. During the lesson, Kuze kept yawning because he was sleepy. When he fell asleep, Alya poked him with a pencil in his hand. Kuze was startled and reflexively raised his hand. The teacher, who had just asked a question, thought Kuze knew the answer. He was forced to stand up to answer. How confused he was because he didn't even know what the question was. When he looked at Alya, she pointed her index finger to the number 2, which meant copper. Kuze enthusiastically answered with that. But it turned out the answer was wrong. Then it was Alya's turn to answer. She said the answer was nickel. The teacher confirmed her answer was correct. The teacher then advised Kuze to pay more attention to the lessons in class. Kuze got angry at Alya, but Alya argued that she was only pointing out the question, not the answer. Smiling, Alya said something in Russian. Alya thought Kuze didn't understand what she said, but it turned out Kuze knew Russian. He understood that what Alya had just said and what she said earlier in the morning were the same, which was you cutie, you. Then Alya said in Russian again, which meant, look at you. You're as red as a baby. Kuze could only grumble to himself. Kuze thought to himself that when he was still in elementary school, he used to play with a Russian girl who lived near his grandfather's house. Kuze had learned over time, and now he understood most of the Russian language. But Kuze didn't expect to now be sitting next to a beautiful girl like Alya, who used Russian to hide her feelings. If Kuze told her now that he understood everything she had said earlier, she would feel very embarrassed. And of course, Kuze couldn't bring himself to do that. The recess bell rang. Alya packed up her books, while Kuze immediately took his phone out of his pocket. Alya, as a member of the student council, scolded Kuze because, except in emergencies and for educational purposes, phone use at school was prohibited. Kuze then argued that he wasn't breaking the rule because he was using it in an emergency. When Alya asked what the emergency was, Kuze replied that he needed to do free rolls in a game that would end in 10 minutes. Alya could only grumble while Kuze didn't care. He then shouted with joy because he got the rare character SSR Tsukuyomi. Annoyed, Alya grabbed Kuze's phone. She then looked at the screen and saw a picture of a silver-haired girl. Alya knew that Tsukuyomi was the goddess of the moon in Japanese mythology. Alya was confused about why her hair was silver, not black. Kuze answered that it might be to match the moon better. Kuze also told Alya to ignore the details because the important thing was that the Tsukuyomi he got was very cute. Annoyed, Alya returned Kuze's phone. Kuze thanked her and was still thrilled about getting the rare character. Alya then grumbled while saying in Russian, "I have silver hair too. You cheater." Of course, Kuze was very surprised to hear it, but he continued to pretend not to know and asked Alya what she said. Alya replied that she had just called Kuze a game junkie. Then the scene shifted to the cafeteria, where a short-haired boy named Takeshi was talking to his friend about wanting to be popular and noticed by the ladies. His friend next to him, named Hikaru, completely ignored him and instead asked Kuze what food he was eating. Of course, Takeshi was angry because his friends were not paying attention to him. Not long after, everyone in the cafeteria became excited when they saw the student council members coming in. They were Alya, student council treasurer, Maria, student council secretary, and Yuki, student council spokesperson. Kuze and his two friends admired their beauty. Hikaru then mentioned a rumor that Maria already had a boyfriend, which is why she always rejected confessions. Takeshi also felt jealous of Kuze because he was friends with Alya and often talked with her, even though she was known to be very cold to others, earning the nickname Ice Queen. Takeshi said that if he had to choose between the three, he would choose Yuki because he thought she was the most approachable, unlike Alya. However, Hikaru knew that Yuki rejected more boys than Maria. After getting their lunch, Alya, Maria, and Yuki looked for a place to sit. Yuki glanced at Kuze and decided to sit next to him. Yuki noticed that she ordered the exact same menu as Kuze, which was super spicy mappo ramen. Alya also joined them, sitting next to Takeshi. Yuki tasted her ramen and commented that it seemed not spicy enough. Kuze agreed, saying he wished the cafeteria provided chili oil on the tables. Yuki then thought about bringing it up in the next student council meeting. Naturally, Kuze protested, saying they shouldn't mix personal matters with public ones. Laughing a little, Yuki said she was just joking. Seeing their closeness, Alya asked if Kuze and Yuki were friends. Yuki replied that they had known each other since they were little. They had been in the same school since preschool. Takeshi and Hikaru excused themselves from the table, having finished their meal. Before leaving, Takeshi whispered to Kuze that he couldn't stand being there because Yuki and Alya were too dazzling. Drawing her chair closer, Yuki asked Kuze if he had thought about her offer to join the student council. Kuze felt he had said multiple times that he didn't want to. Yuki continued to persuade him because, in junior high school, Kuze was a vice president. Alya was surprised to hear this. Yuki then explained that she was the president while Kuze was her vice president back then. Kuze said he was forced to do it because, in the previous student council election, the president and vice president had to work together, so he had to help Yuki. After finishing their meal, Yuki walked back to her classroom. Alya looked jealous, seeing how close Kuze and Yuki were. She told Kuze that she didn't expect him to have a female friend. Kuze was surprised and pointed at Alya, saying that she was his female friend too. Alya then asked, "Are we friends?" Kuze answered, "Of course." As Alya walked away from Kuze, she confirmed his statement, smiling happily. The scene then shifted to a playground where a little blonde girl was sitting. Young Kuze approached her. The little girl greeted Kuze in Russian. They both sat together, watching the sunset. The girl continued chatting in Russian, and young Kuze tried to respond in Russian as well, although hesitantly. They looked at each other, and young Kuze seemed shy. As night fell, they bid farewell to each other. Before leaving, the little girl kissed Kuze on the cheek. That's when Kuze woke up from his sleep. He had just dreamed about his childhood, remembering how he tried to learn Russian just to talk to that little girl. However, now he had forgotten her name. It was still very early, but Kuze was already in class because it was his day for day duty. In the classroom, he cleaned the chalkboard erasers and arranged the desks. Soon, Alya arrived and greeted Kuze. Alya couldn't believe that Kuze managed to wake up early. As she walked to her desk, Kuze noticed her socks were dirty. Alya explained that they got dirty from water splashing from a passing truck. Luckily, she had brought spare socks. Alya suddenly asked if Kuze was interested in joining the student council. Kuze was tired of that question and gave the same answer, which was no. Alya seemed like she wanted to say something, but decided against it. She took off her wet and dirty socks. Kuze was surprised and quickly looked away. Seeing Kuze's reaction, Alya smiled. She then asked Kuze to fetch her spare socks from her locker, saying she couldn't walk there without socks. Begrudgingly, Kuze complied. When he handed them to Alya, she refused to take them. Instead, she asked Kuze to put the socks on her. Of course, Kuze was very shocked and nervous. Alya said it was her way of appreciating Kuze for helping her. She considered it a little treat for Kuze. Kuze muttered that it was only true for a small number of people with peculiar tastes. Alya asked again, and Kuze quickly agreed, saying it was indeed a treat for him. In Russian, Alya muttered that it was also a treat for her. Kuze pretended not to understand what she said, even though he wondered why she had to speak in Russian to hide her feelings. Was it because she was a perfectionist, stressed about being the ideal version of herself? Or perhaps it was her way of relieving stress. Alya saw Kuze just standing there, silent. She then said she would put on her socks by herself. Not wanting to miss the opportunity, Kuze quickly grabbed Alya's foot. Now it was Alya who was surprised. Kuze began putting the socks on Alya's feet. Alya couldn't refuse, but she said she wasn't ready. Kuze continued anyway and was almost done. At the last moment, Kuze's hand accidentally slipped and touched Alya's inner thigh. Reflexively, Alya screamed and kicked Kuze, making him fall. Alya then walked out of the classroom, leaving Kuze lying on the floor. Time passed and Alya and Kuze were back in class. However, Alya seemed very distant, not wanting to look at Kuze and only staring out the window. When the break time arrived, Alya walked in the corridor and Kuze called out to her. He looked like he wanted to say something but was unsure what to say. Seeing this, Alya muttered in Russian, which meant, "You're really a pervert." Kuze did not respond to her words but immediately apologized to Alya. Alya said she was no longer angry. Now it was Alya who apologized for kicking Kuze. She then asked if Kuze was okay. Kuze replied that he was fine. Alya still wasn't entirely convinced, so she wanted to check Kuze's neck to see if he was really unhurt. But when she tried to touch him, Kuze jumped back. He seemed very nervous and unprepared for that. He said he should be thankful because Alya had given him a glimpse of the promised land. Alya was very shocked to hear that. Her face turned red. She couldn't believe Kuze had seen her underwear. Kuze had slipped up, and now he just stood there silently. But quickly, he bowed and thanked Alya again for providing such a spectacular view. Alya immediately hit Kuze, making him fly back. Alya was very angry and ran away from Kuze. Kuze got up and chased after Alya. He felt he had gone too far. Alya kept running, not wanting to listen to Kuze. Alya told Kuze to stop chasing her, but Kuze insisted he wanted to talk to Alya. While still running, Alya said there was nothing more to discuss. 10 minutes later, they were both panting and had stopped beside the school field. Kuze apologized to Alya. Alya forgave him, feeling that it wasn't entirely Kuze's fault. Kuze smiled and then handed her a canned drink as an apology. Kuze said it was Shiruko porridge. He had often seen Alya drinking it, so he thought it might be her favorite drink. Finally, Alya accepted it. Alya opened and drank the beverage, then said in Russian, "Want a sip?" Hearing this, Kuze was very surprised. He didn't expect to get an indirect kiss from Alya if he answered yes. But of course, Kuze didn't do that. He pretended not to understand and asked what Alya had said. Alya then said nothing beats a sweet cold drink after a workout. Alya smiled contentedly and said in Russian, "He doesn't get any of this." Hearing this, Kuze felt very annoyed, and in his heart, he screamed that he actually understood what Alya was saying.